Hey there, all of my Dinks friends. It is Wednesday. That means it is Hump Day. Hump Day is one of my favorite days of the week because I get to spend it with all of you. My name is Dr. Jeff Horowitz, and I am with some of my best friends in the world, Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. Together, we are the Dentist in the Know, and Humpday Happy Hour is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live, and it is, well, it's supposed to be dry January, but I don't know, just that kind of week, the full moon made me say, you know what? It's close to February. I'm thinking about February. So it isn't dry January anymore. I'm having a nice little cocktail with all of you. I hope you pop something nice open and join us and sit down. We have Tooth Doc Irene Iancu from Canada. You all know her as Toothlife Irene. I said Tooth Doc, I think. It's Toothlife Irene. Anyway, we got to meet her at GC. Tremendous lady, educator, tremendous hygienist. So we're really excited to be talking to her about her social media and her social media platform and what she's excited about in the world of dentistry and hygiene. And anyway, we're just happy to be with you for Humpday Happy Hour. So JB, Chad, come on up. As you know, we are all dentists, we are all educators, and we are all business owners. And our job is to bring all of you in the know. JB, I wonder if you got any news for us.
Always. What would a
Okay.
week be without some dental news to keep the pot stirring, right?
I want to hear some dental news.
I know you do. Well, as many of you know, it was a big week in dentistry, right? Because Yi got his new titanium teeth. I can't quite tell, and in fairness, haven't dug very far either to see if these are actually like attached implants or just a titanium snap-on smile or whatever it happens to be. But that has been on every feed in my Instagram and other social media platforms is this new set of hybrid teeth, which was really interesting because in other news, which by the way, no one has posted about, so you're going to hear it first here on Dennis in the Know. Winston Churchill's gold denture partial is also going up for auction next week. So, we're talking about all kinds of metal fake teeth. He had a gold partial denture and apparently, according to historical records, kept multiple sets of these around in his pocket, on his desk, in his house in case it ever broke because he was very self-conscious about his teeth. And obviously he made lots of public appearances, but he also broke them a fair amount because he would get so tense and argumentative and angry about certain things. He would clench so tight that he would break his partial denture on a routine basis. So the dentist that he had in the UK at the time was always on call to fix Mr. Churchill's teeth at any instance that may occur. And so this one set, which he had multiples, is going out for auction on February 6th. The projected cost is somewhere between 8 and 10 grand. I'm not 100% sure that just wouldn't be the cost of the gold, because instead of cast metal, like what we would normally see today, this is actually a gold partial. Super fascinating. Lots of metal teeth going around in the news this week, and I thought they were fairly relevant. Another really sad story that came out of Texas this week, which made me take a pause and think a lot about how we protect ourselves and our workers in the office, was an irate patient who came in and was frustrated about a set of dentures not working, not fitting him well. Ended up coming in and murdering the two dentists that were operating at that facility in front of the staff members, other patients, et cetera. And, this is a conversation that we have on a regular basis with our team about how they secure the building if they feel threatened, and to, certainly let us know if ever there's a situation. But it escalated so quickly, at least based on the story. So if you haven't had that conversation with your team members, if you haven't sort of discussed what to do in an emergency situation, or even if you have an employee whose spouse or significant other or child is creating some issues at home, we try to have a really open dialogue with our team. We never talk about it amongst each other, but we really try to keep our doors open for our team members to come in if they feel concerned about their own safety so that we can protect our workers and our workspace. But I think the same could be said and could be true for patients as well. So I don't know what the lesson is in that story. It's a really sad and unfortunate series of events because we all know dentures suck, frankly. And it's unfortunate that two dentists were taken from us because of, consumer dissatisfaction. So have that open dialogue with your team about continuing to keep yourselves and your team safe. And the last little bit of news coming back around because I'm not allowed to end on a sad story because let me tell you guys, we talked last week. The number of stories I came across this week where dentists were arrested for being drunk doing dentistry, assaulted dental assistants, assaulted patients. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. So I put all those aside and I said, we're not going to go into each of those individual stories throughout the US of dentists misbehaving poorly. We're going to go and talk a little bit about government before we cap it off for this evening. So I don't know if you've been following closely to what's happening with some of the tax discussions that are happening. I had received a note from my CPA not that long ago stating that she was likely going to recommend extension for all of her clients simply because there was a lot of legislation being discussed that probably wouldn't be finalized till the end of the month, being January. And then it would take however many months beyond that to actually get the technical data out of that legislation so that CPAs and other bookkeepers, tax preparers, et cetera, would be prepared to actually provide advice and file taxes correctly. So that is not advice. That is just what I've been told and certainly something we need to be watching. But there is a big tax bill up, tax relief for American families and workers of 2024. This has a lot of language in there that could have direct impact for small businesses, in particular most dental offices. I do think that there will be some favorable legislation in there for small businesses. And so I think this is definitely going to be something to watch. It passed handedly through the House Ways and Means Committee. And so now likely it will go before Congress for a final vote. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a final answer so that our professionals, CPAs, tax preparers, bookkeepers, et cetera, we'll have all the intimate details of what to do in preparation for this next tax filing cycle. But you may want to just hang tight. April 15th may need to come and go, and you may need to extend just so that you can be ready for all the new changes. And with that, that's the news.
I think we should. I think we should bring our guest up. So, Jeff, I can't multitask, so I'm going to ask you to bring our guest as I start the introduction.
I will do it.
But our guest is a real rock star in the dental field. I met Irene Iancu, I think about 7 or 8 years ago. And all I knew was that she was an influencer and that she was a hygienist. And when I met her, I realized how much more than that she is. Irene is a Canadian registered restorative dental hygienist and an entrepreneur. She owns her own startup practice, the Toothlife Studio, where she combines various specialties such as pediatrics, orthodontics, periodontics, and restorative dentistry. She's an international speaker, a key opinion leader, host of the Tooth or Dare podcast, and she creates amazing educational content on all social platforms under the handle at toothlife.irene. I've met her in person. I've seen her speak. She's a very passionate dental professional, and it's a real honor just to have her here on our show. So thank you very much for being here, Irene. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Hi. Hello. How's
How
everybody
are
doing?
you?
I love listening to you in the back room. I had so many things to say, but I was muted.
Chime in. We're
Damn,
if there's
this
something
is-
you want to add. Jeff
it's
has
an
no
open
boundaries.
floor.
Why should you?
I mean, as a Canadian, I feel like 50% of the stuff that you mention, like no one really kills anybody here.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like your denture will suck, and then the patient will apologize.
I do
Sorry.
love that about Canadians.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
I don't have a ridge, so I'm so sorry.
Sorry, eh? Pardon.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Chad, we met at a 3M event it was in 2014. I had 0 Instagram followers at the time. Yeah, I was a KOL. I started off as a KOL. It's so funny. At some point you go from KOL to influencer when people start following you on social media and they've forgotten about everything that you did before you hit X amount of followers on the gram. But yeah, we met at the 3M event. They did a KOL event. I think we were in similar groups. We were in the PVS group.
Yeah, and I remember the first conversation that I didn't start, and I tried not to chime in, was on conceal and carry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We get on the bus and it's like somebody just goes straight to the Canadian. Hey, what do you think about conceal and carry? Okay, yeah, let's go there. Yeah,
I've never seen a gun before in my life. I don't want to.
yeah.
But
so
you're all free to do what you want to do.
Do you play the violin?
I do. Yes,
do
I play the violin. I also play the piano, which is over there. You can't see it.
Now, do you do this regularly?
Yeah, like weekly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I can't play any instrument.
Sure you can.
No.
Your voice is an instrument. You stand on stage. You sing
trust
like
me.
a beautiful
You're really
bird.
gonna go there, Irene.
You don't want to hear that either. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I do.
wouldn't do it.
I learned to play the piano when I was a kid, and then I picked up the violin later in life.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
You never hear anybody say they picked up the violin later in life. Like that might be the first time I think I've ever heard that. Usually it's like I started playing the violin and then I moved on to X or whatever. But I mean, I know this has nothing to do with dentistry or hygiene or anything, but I'm curious about that.
Well, interestingly enough, so creativity and putting out creative content means that you need to be creative in a variety of different ways. So picking up the violin 4 years ago was a intentional exercise for me to kind of, stretch the brain muscle and the finger muscles in a different way. So yeah, creative people in dentistry need to have other forms of creative outlet. Now I can't really draw and I don't like paint because it's too messy, and the piano is good, but the piano, I mean, I could read music and I can already play. So I needed a new challenge. And I always thought, violin music was just so beautiful. So I bought a violin and I have violin lessons. I actually have lessons every Tuesday during my lunch break. So I leave the office right at 1 o'clock and my lesson starts at 1:15. And then I'm back at the office for my patient at 2:15 every week. So it's like part of my Tuesday.
Time?
And then I practice at night.
That's freaking awesome. I don't know how you have time for all that you do.
Some of the best books that I've read on leadership and about growing a practice and understanding people and being empathetic has a lot of connections between some form of creative outlet that isn't, sitting. We were actually talking about this earlier. Yeah, it's just sitting in front of your computer and trying to be creative and saying, this is the 1 hour block of time that I have to come up with the next 3 months of quarterly marketing. Like that never happens. So you need to either walk or move your body. And I've been doing a lot of that. I bought a Peloton. So if I need to think about something, I'll jump on the bike and that'll be my 25 minutes of thinking time, whether it's hiring a new employee, firing someone, whatever it is that I need to do. I think about it either playing music or on a bike.
So let's get right into it. We know that you're obviously very well-rounded, that now that we've figured this out, that you do violin, piano, dentistry. Tell us about this. I know there's a lot of people that want to know about their registered restorative dental hygienist. I mean, obviously we don't have that in the United States, but
we do.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for
Did
example,
you
in
all know that we
Arizona-
do?
Well, not in every state.
We
Not
don't
in every
have it in
state.
Texas, maybe I
No,
should say.
we don't have it in North Carolina.
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah.
it in Texas, but tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are states in the United States, just like there are provinces in Canada. So, not all of the Canadian provinces have restorative designations. You have to go to school afterwards for it. So, you do your undergraduate degree or your associate's degree, and then you go back to school. So, I've been a hygienist since 2007. I've been practicing as a general hygienist for the better part of my career. And then I did a few other designations. So in order for me to do ortho, bend wires, place brackets, attachments, all of that fun stuff, I had to do a separate module. So I did that in 2010. And then I'm also an oral myofunctional therapist. I did that like in 2018. And then in 2020, I went back to school for restorative. So I just opened my practice. My practice was like 7 months old. And I told the team, like, I'm going to go do this now before things get crazy. So I went back to school 3 days a week for the better part of 9 months. And the designation allows me or gives me the opportunity to do restorative, including everything except prepping a tooth. So I can't remove any structure, permanent structure, but doc will come in. I guess more similarly, you probably have FDAs. Do you have an FDA
We have
in
FDAs.
Texas?
We don't in Texas, but
Not in
I
North
do.
Carolina either.
We don't
I
in
do
South
understand
Carolina.
EFTA. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think every state has a different, parameter around what an FDA can do, but I can fill, I can cement, anything from a temporary restoration all the way to a veneer. I can't permanently restore an implant. That's still doctor designation. I can do resin infiltration, which has been one of the most profitable and kind of talked about procedures in my practice. I get a lot of referrals in for that. Yeah, I do mock-ups. You name it.
So does the dentist that's there, does he work for you?
She
work for you?
Yeah, we're an all-female team. I did have a dentist who worked for me. And worked for me is a very loose term because an associate doesn't really work for you. They're a contracted person that works in the space. So she's not technically an employee. But yeah, so we'll operate out of a couple of rooms. She'll prep one patient, and then by the time she's prepping the next patient, I'm restoring the first one. And we kind of do this dance back and forth where the assistant is the stable person in the operatory. And we just kind of keep moving back and forth.
Do you do a lot of periodontal work as well?
So 2 days a week. So I only work clinically 3 days a week. Mondays and Tuesdays are usually pretty strict perio days. And then Wednesdays are restorative days. Sometimes there'll be a restorative patient in between, but it's difficult to flip your room and flip your brain and then trying to juggle another operatory all at the same time. So we did that at first and it just didn't work with the flow. I only have a 3 operatory practice. Plumbed and ready for 4, but for now just 3. So we try and stick to those days. And then Thursdays and Fridays, usually I'm either on the road or doing social media stuff, writing,
or playing the violin,
lectures, or playing a violin in the stairwell. Yeah.
So is the dentist on site all the 3 days?
5 days. So the office runs without me there. Gotcha. Yeah. And additionally to that, we have prostho days and then oral surgery days. Normally those are on weekends. So some weeks we're open 7 days a week. Wow. And fortunately for me, I only have to physically be in the office 3 days a week. But that was kind of an interesting thing by design. I listened to a podcast that talks about like unsticking yourself from your business because you end up being the bottleneck, especially when you're really busy. And some of the biggest challenges with providers that have been in their space for so long is the, proverbial Irene only, Chad only, Jeff only, patient. So from the beginning, I didn't want that. If anyone started to have these, like, I only want to see you feelings, then I would immediately say, no, you have to see everyone. Like, I want you to know everyone in the practice. I want you to build connections with everybody. Because what if one day I'm sick? And that is the verbiage that we say to patients when they start to have these, like, the reason is calibration. If for some reason one person prefers somebody else over another, it's either they really love you or skill-wise, we're just not calibrated the same way. So, yeah.
What's your favorite procedure to do?
Restoratively?
No, just
Or
out of your entire practice. I mean, just everything,
okay,
because you
well,
have so many hats that you
I
wear.
love oral myofunctional therapy is really cute because I get to work with kids. So I worked in pedo for 4 years. I went from pedo to perio in a surgical perio practice. So I did SRPs with flaps. And then from perio, I went to this like bougie cosmetic practice in downtown Toronto, kind of like the Dr. Appa of Toronto. And then from there, I went to a holistic practice and a DSO. And my last boss had an MBA. Both of my last employers were COIS mentors. So I was COIS trained super early. So I guess I picked little pieces of everything that I liked and incorporated them into the space. So myofunctional therapy I love because I get to work with kids with lisps, with speech issues, adding in the ortho component as we treat patients with ortho. For example, anterior open bites, I can help retrain their facial muscles and their tongue in order to prevent that open bite from reoccurring in the retention phase. And then like just a good old fashioned bloody SRP with just like granulation tissue everywhere, like 12 millimeter pockets. I'm like elbow deep in blood. I have to stretch my fingers out after. That's really cool. But I think my biggest love is for like tech. So my SRPs are not just me and scalers anymore. Like I use reveal fluorescence built into my loops that help illuminate the bacteria that's in the mouth and caries by identifying the porphyrins. So I do that, which is cool. I have an airflow machine. So that kind of gets incorporated. I do a lot of arrestin and laser. So my SRP appointments like will take a whole afternoon and will cost a lot of money, but I get to use all of the tools all in the same place.
And are you free to use lasers in any way? Is it restricted in any way because of your hygiene designation, or
Yeah,
because
I can't
it's very
initiate
much that way. Hygienists here in South Carolina can barely touch a laser,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. But
so I can't initiate. I can't use an initiated tip. So my
Okay.
tip is uninitiated, meaning it won't cut, which is fine. I mean, for what I'm doing, I'm seeing great results with an uninitiated tip. Do I wish that it could be initiated? Yes. If I hit a piece of plaque, will it initiate on its own? Yeah. Do I freak out? Yeah.
Yeah.
But biology, what am I going to do? I can't control it all. So,
Right.
but generally my perio protocol is using an uninitiated tip. If it gets to the point where I need an initiated tip, then I'm likely going to refer out to perio anyways. So I'm not going to waste it. The Canadian billing is a little bit different here. We use scaling units. The SRP versus Profi, like that doesn't exist here. It's very different. So if someone's
It's got to be better than what we have.
it is so much better. So
Yeah.
it's based on time, 15
Right.
minutes of time.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Getting paid for what you actually do.
Time. I actually can
Yeah.
bill for chart notes. Like that's
Yeah.
built into scaling units. It's built into time. So if it takes me 7 minutes to write my chart notes and to prepare for my charts, I'm going to bill half a unit, which is, I think a unit is like $73. So half of that. But anyways, I digress on the billing component.
That's pretty cool that you can do that. Now, how does that work with the insurance in Canada?
Yeah. So every insurance company is going to be a little bit different. So we've got like Sun Life and Manulife and Canada Life, which are usually paid by an employer through a group policy or group plan of some sort. And they have allocated, there's codes, just like you have codes. The codes are based on a frequency of either time or a unit. So let's say someone has a checkup. It's called a recall. Their checkup will either be 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, and it's a specific code that's covered. And there are a variety of other exam codes. On the cleaning, scaling side, we have scaling units. So someone's insurance company will say, well, we'll give you, Chad, 12 units of scaling per year. You use them whenever you want. You can use them every single month until you run out, or our office will say, well, based on 12, you can have your teeth cleaned 4 times a year. The average is 3 units of scaling, which is 45 minutes of time. Anything above or beyond that will likely be out of pocket. But it helps us identify at the end of the year or close to the end of the year, like, is this person going to max out? Are they maxing out in their units, or are they maxing out in their dollar value? And some insurance companies will provide you one of the two, whichever is reached first, either like a total benefit plan max, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, or a unit max. And the total benefit also includes like perio, resto, non-specialist fees, that sort of thing. Coding is complicated, but the scaling stuff is pretty simple.
It sounds as it is extremely complicated, but pardon my ignorance because
That's
I don't
probably
understand.
just me making it sound more complicated than it is. I don't
No.
really talk about coding. Like that's not one of my speaking topics. So, but yeah, we lost Chad in my
I
boring.
know. What do you do? Hit a button?
My boring explanation of coding is like, I'm out of here, Irene. I don't
Go
care
ahead,
how long I've
JB,
known
quick,
you.
bring the Damo up.
Yeah, get a demo.
Oh, sorry, I'm back.
Chad's
I don't
back.
know what happened. My screen just went blank and I was talking, but pardon my ignorance. If a patient is everything in Canada, like, do you all have to participate in all of the plans or accept
there's no
all
like
of the insurance?
in network or out of network like you
Okay.
have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And-
your choices are you are either assignment or non-assignment, meaning the
Okay.
insurance company pays you or the patient pays you and then reimburses the patient. There are government programs as well. Like in my province, there's ODSP, the Ontario Disability Plan, for people that are not working or minimally working and have some sort of disability. Their fee guide, the codes are the same, but the fee guide is crappy. So the only thing that changes is either the year of the fee guide or what that fee guide covers, which is normally a fraction of it. It's illegal for you to not accept that. It's also not allowed for you to collect the difference from a patient. So let's say I'm above fee guide 20%. My fees are already going to be 20% higher. And this person's insurance covers 10% of what I'm charging. I'm not allowed to ask for them to pay the rest. I'm also not allowed to decline seeing them. Yeah. It's a huge thing here. It's very like the government seems to think that like we're doing our part of being, healthcare providers and like supporting the needs of the community, which I wholeheartedly believe in. But when your overhead is hundreds of dollars per operatory and my doc is doing a 2-surface filling and that 2-surface filling is $63 and she's getting a portion of it and then I have to pay my assistant like $30 an hour. I've lost money in that appointment.
Well, that's why you all hate your prime minister. Anyhow, we'll stay out of politics.
That's actually why I was asking, because that's kind of the way that I understood it. So you've got to be very creative in order to own your own dental practice.
Yeah, especially when you're operating in an associate model right off the bat. It's different when you're a principal dentist and you're the one making the greatest amount, but it's very different when you're operating the way that I do.
That's well, hats off to you. That's pretty fantastic that you're doing that.
I'm gonna totally switch subjects here. Totally. Sure. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
We're out of
Okay.
insurance. You mean you don't love the insurance?
Like
we're
ours
done.
sucks. Yours
That's a
sucks.
rabbit hole you never get out of.
Yeah.
Let's immediately take the red or the blue pill.
Yeah.
The other blue pill.
The other blue pill that Chad didn't take.
The other. Anywho, we digress and Chad's face turns beet red again. So you did something on your Instagram, I think starting last year, that I thought was super interesting. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about it. You were super intentional about when you were traveling to different locations to because we're all guilty of this, especially if we're KOLs or like traveling for work pretty consistently. You fly in, swoop in, do the thing, you're back at the airport and you're gone. And it could literally be anywhere, USA, anywhere, Canada, anywhere. And you would have zero idea what is happening in that city whatsoever. And you became really intentional about becoming a tourist of the towns in which you were traveling in. So if you were coming in for an event, you were making a concerted effort to experience some of the things that the town had to offer. First, would love to know how that impacted you. And what are some of the takeaways that you have? Because I think all of us are guilty of that, regardless of what we do. When we have to travel for things that are not vacation specific, we tend to just sort of bookend it into all the other stuff that we have to do.
Thank you for noticing that. That was it's interesting. People are so used to seeing dental content on my page that when I started posting personal content, it doesn't perform as well, and it doesn't, you don't get as many views or likes or comments or whatever those vanity metrics are. But at one point I realized, like, what am I actually doing all of this for? Like, why am I schlepping to all of these places to stand on a podium for a couple of hours to feel that like buzz that you get when you're up there? And then you get off, you take off your heels, you put on your running shoes, you run to the airport to have some crappy airport food, and then home, rinse and repeat. And then I have a map in my other office, and it's like a world map with pins of all of the places that I've been, every single city, and these are not just, American cities, Canadian cities, global. Like I went to Singapore for a conference, I went to Paris for a conference, I went to London for a conference, done all of these cool places. And I saw the inside of the convention center, my hotel room, and the lobby in an Uber. So at one point I said, where am I going this year? I'm going to add the day before. And then I'm going to add the day after. And the day after doesn't have to be a full day. It might just be a half day. And I'm going to intentionally do something by myself. I'm going to say no to the day before for any meetings or any dinners. And the same thing for the day after. Instead of flying out at 7 p.m. after finishing lecture at 4, I'm going to stay overnight for an extra night at my own expense. And I consider this to be like professional self-care.
Yeah.
I don't know how better to describe it. It's kind of weird. Like, I'll bring my own robe and I'll pack my own face masks, and I'll buy a bottle of wine and keep it in my hotel room. For example, I was in New York for Greater New York. I went to the Nutcracker by myself. I bought a ticket. I sat in the third row because it's so easy to buy a ticket for one person. I had a beautiful view of the orchestra. I got to see the Nutcracker in New York City at the National Ballet. I took myself to the Met. I took myself to the Museum of Modern Art. And I'm basically taking myself on these like little dates intentionally to see something. And, you're building a connection with not only the people that live in that city, but also with yourself. And if you don't like yourself, you don't like being around yourself at some of these places, then you really get to learn why very quickly. And what it's done. I enjoy traveling more now. I mean, at one point, I'm sure we've all been there, where we're like, I gotta go to Idaho next week. Like doing a study club on a Thursday night. I'm gonna go with Delta because all of the other Americans full or whatever it is.
You haven't hung out with Lon McRae. You'd be a shooter.
Yeah.
And now it's different. Now I'm like, I'm going to Chicago midwinter and I'm gonna go see a show in Chicago. I'm going to Oklahoma. And I get to see a show in Oklahoma. I'm like super excited to see the show in Oklahoma. And
is
it's
it Oklahoma?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But it helps my openers too, because if I do something at the beginning of the conference, then I've got a story to share at the beginning of whatever my lecture is, and somehow it works in. And I like photography, so I take a lot of pictures and then I document it on social media. I don't know. I find this is a for me thing. And other KOLs, I know some have shared that I've inspired them to like do a little extra something for themselves. Like order the breakfast, go and eat oysters at an oyster bar in Seattle, which I did by myself at the bar. And you know what? I didn't have to wait in line because there's nobody else. I read a book while I sat there, and I had the best oysters I had in a very long time, right next to two people making out. But whatever, it is what it is.
There's always good people watching anywhere you go.
It's so cool. And they wonder who you are for sure. They're like, who's this girl sitting at the bar reading her romance novel by herself, eating a $7 oyster?
I think, I couldn't agree with you more. I think some of the greatest discoveries that I've made in cities, as far as restaurants and cuisine and things like that, have been sitting at a bar. Because what ends up happening is, not to just go into a bar and get drunk, to go into a nice restaurant, sit at the bar, talk with the bartender, find out what all the locals come in there for, find out what the best dishes are. When you start chatting with them, they'll bring you stuff to try, and they'll say like, this is our signature dish, and you need to try this. And that I think that's so much of the culture of everywhere that we go. It's just, it's really exciting when you get to do that. The other thing that I'll attest to, and Bobby Pappert is on this webinar is on this broadcast right now is what you said about one ticket. You can get the best seats to everything buying one ticket. And
because no one wants, people want a space, right? So you'll see 2 tickets and then 2 tickets and this like solo one ticket.
It's phenomenal.
Like when you go to a movie theater, like no one wants to sit next to each other because we're going to get the cooties, but there's always these like perfect one tickets everywhere. And for a one person,
right, in the
great.
3rd row or something. So that's great advice for everyone out there too. But as a serious question though, one of our viewers asked, and to put this delicately, how difficult is it as a hygienist to have to go into an office and manage a dentist and say, okay, this person may have gone to school a few more years than me, and this person has quote unquote a higher degree than I do, but yet somehow this is my practice. These are my patients, and here's how we're going to treat them. Are there any difficulties with that, or how do you approach that? And then, what kind of resistance do you get from the other side? Because I'm sure it's got to be hard for a dentist to come in and say, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable to have, and forgive me for saying this. This is just a question that came through, and I think it's viable. I mean, I think other people may be thinking this is, is there conflict in the dentist having to say, okay, I'm going to get my direction from the hygienist, who's obviously very smart and knows how to run a practice and is very well educated. But does that cause any conflict, or how do you approach that in a delicate way?
Great question. So I think it all starts with hiring. So, you're not managing people. I think the biggest problem is we try and manage people. What we should be doing is managing expectations. So the expectation is that if this, then that. These are the systems. This is what science tells us. This is what research tells us. Obviously, to a certain extent and degree, you make your own decision making, but it starts with hiring. So my hiring process, I've had 3 doctors that have 4. One doesn't really count, but I've had 4 doctors that have worked in my practice in the last, like full-time bread and butter, everyday dentistry doctors. The first one that I hired, Dr. Manoj, was a prosthodontist in India. My hiring process for a dentist is present me a case. Present me a case that you do the best work, your favorite cases, your every single day cases. I want to see photos. I want to see radiographs. I want you to talk me through your material selection. And if you can't do that, then you're not a good fit. You're not meeting the expectations that you're able to communicate your procedures. Dr. Manoj was amazing. He went through every single one of his bread and butter procedures. He documented, he showed photos. He was like a hire right away. And then I asked him, show me procedures that you wish you could do more of. And he showed me his full arch cases that were also beautiful. And he walked me through every step, his treatment planning, fabulous. He left me to go and open his own practice after promising me for so long that he wouldn't. So I guess I made it look too easy. And then I had to hire someone else who unfortunately lost her vision, which is a horrible story. So she didn't work. She was a new grad, didn't work for very long. Her case presentation was good. She was new, she was moldable. She really wanted to learn. And the beauty of what we get to do here as KOLs is we've got so many resources at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. We've got companies that love us, that are constantly sending us new materials to try. They're giving us access to webinars. They're giving us access to free CE. And what are we doing with it? Most of the time we're sticking it in our back pocket, and we're not even attending because we're going to these conferences and we're so busy running around. So that is the expectation, is that if you're a team member in our office, you're learning, you're constantly learning. We do CE like crazy. So I'm not managing anyone at all. The expectations are that we're able to use all of the resources that I'm able to provide my office, which is a lot. Like Chad, you get your KOL people will say, what do you need for this lecture? What do I have to send you for your cases? You've got boxes that expire in the end because you can't use them all. So those are the expectations. And luckily for me, I've only had to let one person go. And those expectations just, we couldn't meet. To the little section of the Venn diagram in the middle, we couldn't align. and, hire slowly, fire quickly. So we're in a great place right now. I mean, she's been with me for 2 years. Dr. Michelle's fabulous. She's a relatively new grad. She's been in it for 5 years, but she's so hungry. She wants to try every single procedure. She wants to try every material, even if she doesn't like it, even if it's just to replace something. She's just me in dentist form, it seems.
So what if, and it sounds like this doesn't happen just because of your process and that.
What if we disagree? You're going to say, what if you disagree on a treatment plan?
No. What if a prep is substandard in your eyes?
It's so, well, the beauty of a 3D scanner and of loupes, which everyone wears in our practice, loupes, like mandatory. My hygienist that I hired didn't have loupes, and I used my resources and I gifted her loupes. I'm like, you must wear loupes. You need magnification of over 2.5. None of this 1.5 crap, you won't see anything. So we all wear loupes. We have a 3D scanner, digital scanner. We take photos of everything. We take photos with our intraoral mouthwatch camera. And I mean, if you can't see it and someone else does, if she found calculus that I missed or vice versa, you need to build a relationship with people in order to speak radically and candid in a respectful way, not in front of a patient, where it's not taken to heart. And if I'm restoring it and I'm having a hard time sealing that margin, if I can't get a good seal on the base of that subgingival prep and build up that ridge, then I need you to refine it. And it is what it is, right? I don't think we need to be upset over that.
So that does happen from time to time.
Sure. It happened while I was in school. I was in school learning how to do a class 2 for the first time. And my prep was like jagged. It looked like shark teeth. And I looked at it, and this dentist wasn't wearing loupes when she was prepping. And I looked at it, and I was like, I wish it was just a little smoother. So I brought my instructor in, and then my instructor went back to the dentist and said, you need to fix this prep and smooth it out. And she did. I mean, we're colleagues. We're all in it for the right reasons. We're in it for the patient. We're in it to do the best work that we can as a legacy to our practice. I think that just means we need to let go of our ego. Speaking of ego, I recently incorporated AI, radiographic interpretation, into my office. So I've had Pearl AI for the last 2 months. Let me tell you, the dentists on Instagram have been ripping me apart, like limb by limb. Most recently, one said, why am I paying my hygienist $75 an hour for AI to tell her where the calculus is, or $70 an hour, or whatever it was? There's a lot of other stuff that AI shows you. Calcified canals and periapical abscesses and pathology, recurrent decay, poor margins. And I think that if we're using science to our greatest ability, then it can only make us better clinicians. And communicating with one another is super important.
Yeah, I noticed, I didn't really see what triggered you, but I noticed that you kind of mentioned that you were
triggered.
Kind of getting beat up a little bit on Instagram.
Irene, we told you that.
And so I hate that happened. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't see the precipitant, but we've been using Pearl for over a year now, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a truly phenomenal feature within both of our practices. That you quickly learn to not live without. You get it on a free trial, and then all of a sudden, you start it starts paying, and you're like, yep, I'm just sticking with it. It's going to work. And I disagree with it a lot, but
sure. Yeah, we do too. We delete stuff all the time. There's like weird things that are happening, and like that wasn't really there. Or you go in and you check, and it's remineralized. It's like an enamel lesion, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's incipient.
But I love disagreeing with it.
It saved my ass. Can I swear on this thing?
Yeah.
So what triggered this whole thing is that it saved my ass. I did this crazy SRP on this young guy who was in his 30s, had recently quit smoking. So smokers just generally have like this keratinized tissue. Their papillas are like tight and blunt, and everything is pink. So I couldn't see the presence of calculus subgingivally. So I basically went in blind. I took preoperative radiographs, went in, scaled my heart away. There was burnished calculus already present. So whomever he saw before me also had the same struggle. Obviously, they didn't have either the radiographs or definitely not AI. So I used AI to go in and identify everything. And then I went back in and felt, and after 2 hours of SRP, I'm like, everything just feels like the same. Took another set of radiographs, still had subgingival calculus identified by AI, not by me. I was like, oh, it's a premolar. That's got to be the distal root to the mesial root. Like, that's just the concavity of where the CEJ is. And I'm convincing myself it's anatomy. And then when I went back in, it's like, not anatomy, it's calculus. So it saved my ass. Like, it saved me from doing a better job. And then this dentist, that's what he said is, and I quote him, a very experienced dentist of 33 years in practice, said that why do I need that? If my hygienist is experienced enough, then she shouldn't need AI to tell her. I'm like, well, then you just do endo without an apex locator. If you've been doing it for 33 years, you should know where the end of that canal is. And that was the, are you still holding up your x-rays to the light like that to see them? Because if you are, then you're doing great work.
That's why I do implants without an x-ray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure. You do with your feet too, right? You're just
with
holding it.
right, exactly. Because that's awesome.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you one last question because we're running short on time. But you have invested a lot in the COIS program, and that is no small undertaking.
I didn't do all of them. Let me preface that I haven't spent or now what might be almost $200,000.
Yeah.
So
well, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Huge undertaking, but kudos for even going out and spending the time to see what's being talked about, what is the data saying right now? Where is the current research? Where, it's a great outlet for things like that for anybody. So, everybody thinks you have to be just a restorative dentist in order to be able to do that. But, all specialists and everyone are welcome to educational opportunities like that. Mm-hmm. So just, I say kudos for spending time out there and resources, because we often don't, especially when we're on the lecture circuit a lot, we don't often get enough time to do enough of our own CE. So it sounds like you've chosen that wisely. So
well, that was a pre-practice educational indulgence. What we do now, so now I use the Spear app. So we do our own little Spear at Toothlife Study Club once a month. All of my team has access to it, and we assign modules, and then we have a study club in the morning on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and we do breakfast. It's like bagels and schmear and study club coffee, and we talk about whatever it is that we want to learn. So as valuable as COIS was, the problem is I don't have a COIS trained dentist. So I don't have a COIS trained team. It would be me, myself, and Irene trying to implement this, which didn't quite work.
I got that.
At its inception. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So I've kind of left the COIS stuff. It's built into our forms, and, the caries risk assessment, the red, yellow, and red, green, whatever, like giving people rankings based on things. We still do that, but we're more into Spear a little bit more now these days.
Kudos to you for that. I mean, I think it's just valuable to have. Doesn't matter what it is. It's valuable to have a high-end educational
level of education.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
it's mandatory. It's so mandatory if you want to be a proactive clinician.
Yeah. And a lot of associates experience that same thing. They're investing in education, but then if their particular practice isn't really bought into that philosophy or whatever. So I think it's just continuing to find opportunities and figure out what works for your team and for your group. And, it's not that you put everything to bed, but you just find ways to use it on your own. But then, you do have to be somewhat flexible to the work environments that you find yourself in. And a lot of people have that same challenge, honestly, whether they own it or, don't own it.
Yeah. We had our monthly meeting last week, and one of the questions, there's 2 questions in our monthly meeting. One is what is a procedure that you do every single day that you want to learn more about or elevate your learning on, and what's a procedure that you're supposed to be doing every single day that you're not doing it because you either aren't comfortable or you haven't had enough reps or you're just nervous about it. And then those are the 2 things that we focus our next learning on. So as a team, we go to 2 or 3 conferences a year. Luckily, 2 of them are in our city. And that becomes mandatory. Like, you wrote those down, you claimed that knowledge gap, or you claimed that that's a passion of yours. Those are now mandatory. You've got to go and do another course. You've got to explore that passion of yours more. And I've made that happen so much that I've lost employees. Like, I've lost, over the last 3 years, 4 different employees to going back to dental hygiene school because they wanted to learn more about perio. So, like, you've got to do it. And as an employer, as a boss, as a leader, you have to encourage them to do that. Otherwise, they're going to leave you for other reasons.
That's right.
Last question. Do you know Dave Kim? I know Toronto is tiny, but Dave Kim was my roommate, who is a great Toronto dentist.
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe by face.
Yeah.
But no.
Well,
he looks like a Dave.
He looks like a Dave Kim.
Am I supposed to know him? You can't put a girl on the spot live like that.
He's a great Toronto dentist, and he was my roommate in dental school.
Toronto's like 1 billion people.
I joke. I said I know how small
It is the
Toronto
largest city
is.
in Canada with the highest per capita and also the highest dentist per capita. So there are probably 17 different David Kims.
I don't even know all the dentists in my town.
In Toronto. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We've kept you a little longer than billed here, but I certainly appreciate it. I know we all do. And I think, there's a lot of things that we could have gotten from this, but what I really got was that your pursuit of not only licensure credentials, but just furthering your education and becoming the best that you can be. And I think that that's the takeaway message, that you never stop learning. And if we do, then we're irrelevant. So thank you.
I think the takeaway message is always look for 1 ticket for concerts.
Yeah. I was like,
you always get great seats. I think that's probably, I love
I'm going to see Andrea Bocelli at a conference. And I got 1 ticket on the floor. I don't even remember where it is, but I'm very excited for that. Myself, and Irene at
ahead are pissed that they're like in the 18th row of the balcony. So,
well, that was
I
the
hate
thing
to
when
say
I bought
this,
the
but I
ballet
don't
ticket.
think he's going to see you.
The only other 2 tickets were up in the nosebleeds.
Yeah,
love it.
Well, anyhow, great show. Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for watching. And please go follow at toothlife.irene, and you will be amazed at what she posts on social media. It's always relevant and entertaining. So
thanks, Irene.
Oh,
have a great night.
Appreciate it. Thank you. See you in Chicago.
See you in Chicago.
Yay.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.